Is that someone talking in the middle of the night? These were the words that came out of Emily's mouth. An American living in Japan. It seems that some kind of secret meeting was taking place late at night in a certain apartment in Japan. What exactly happened? Before we dive into the details, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. By doing so, stories that interest you will naturally appear in your feed. Now, let's jump into the details. Emily was exhausted. No, to be more precise, she had been exhausted for quite some time. She had been living in Tokyo for 5 years, enduring the pressures of working at a foreign company. Every day, she woke up at 7 a.m., and by 8 a.m., she was opening the office door. From there, her long day began, filled with deadlines, phone calls, and endless emails. By the time she returned home, it was always past 10 p.m. For Emily, coming home was her only solace. Away from the noise of Tokyo, her quiet apartment, and the moment she collapsed into bed were her only escape from the busy day-to-day grind. It was her one source of comfort, where she didn't have to think about anything, just sleep. That was the only way she could recharge her energy to tackle the next day. But one night, that peace was shattered. It was a night like any other. After a long day at work, Emily dragged her tired body back to her apartment. She skipped dinner and a shower, heading straight for bed, wrapping herself in the soft sheets. The moment her body sank into the bed, she felt a deep sense of relief. But that quiet was soon broken. Just after 1 a.m., loud music and laughter suddenly erupted from the apartment next door. "Hey, you're absolutely amazing. Ha ha ha, listen to the tune I'm playing." She could hear their conversation in Chinese through the wall. The music boomed, guitars strummed, and shouting continued without pause. Emily opened her eyes in surprise and looked at the clock. It was already past 1:30 a.m. In the middle of the night? At first, she thought it must be a dream. But as she strained her ears, the noise grew louder. Things were crashing onto the floor. People were laughing hysterically, and guitar melodies filled the air. It felt as if she were in the middle of a concert hall. Panicking, Emily pulled the blanket over her head, trying to block out the noise. But the sounds from beyond the wall penetrated mercilessly into her ears. Her heart started pounding, and her frustration grew. Her body was exhausted, but the noise was keeping her wide awake. Her mind buzzing with irritation. Why on earth are they having a party at this hour? She sighed and checked the clock again. It was past 2 a.m. Tomorrow, she had an important meeting, yet sleep was impossible. Her frustration peaked, but there was nothing she could do. The people next door were Chinese exchange students. There was a language barrier and cultural differences. Emily thought about getting up and going over to tell them to be quiet. But she wasn't even sure if they would understand her. In the end, Emily barely slept that night. Over the next few days, the same thing happened again and again. Every night, the Chinese students next door threw parties and made noise. And every night, their loud voices and music disrupted Emily's sleep. Her body began to show signs of distress. The sleepless nights continued, and it started to affect her work. When she looked in the mirror each morning, her face was marked with exhaustion. Dark circles under her eyes, dull skin, and an inability to concentrate on anything. At the office, her responses to coworkers became slower, and she couldn't even give accurate answers to her boss's questions. "Emily, are you okay? You've been looking really tired lately." Her colleague's concerned voice stung her ears. Emily could no longer hide her fatigue. The cause was clear every night, the noise from the apartment next door. It was ruining every part of her life. "I have to do something about this." She told herself this over and over, but she had no idea how to deal with it. Even after 5 years in Japan, Emily wasn't fluent in Japanese. On top of that, how could she explain to the Chinese students next door? Just thinking about it made her feel defeated. Then one night, Emily's patience finally reached its limit. It was 1 a.m. And once again, guitar music and loud laughter echoed from the apartment next door. Emily sat up in bed and grabbed the clock beside her. 1:30 a.m. again, why? Sighing, she thought for a moment about what she should do. Maybe it was finally time to go next door and directly ask them to be quiet. She thought this as she climbed out of bed, still in her pajamas, and headed for the front door. Her hand grasped the doorknob, but she paused for a moment. They were Chinese. The language barrier, cultural differences. How would they react? Emily took a deep breath and stood frozen for a few seconds, unsure of what to do. And then, it happened. Suddenly, a loud noise pierced through the air. Someone was banging on the door next to hers. Surprised, Emily peeked through the crack in her door. There stood a large Japanese man, Takeshi, from the apartment next door on the other side. He was usually a calm and quiet person, but now he looked furious. "Hey, knock it off already." His booming voice echoed through the hallway. "What do you think you're doing at this hour?" Takeshi pounded on the door of the Chinese student's apartment relentlessly, the sound reverberating through the building. Emily watched in astonishment as Takeshi's actions unfolded before her eyes. The door opened, and the terrified faces of the Chinese students appeared. They immediately started apologizing. We're sorry. We didn't mean to." But Takeshi's anger didn't subside so easily. He continued to scold them harshly. "Do you realize how loud you've been? I haven't been able to sleep for days." However, after venting his anger, Takeshi took a deep breath and regained his composure. He chose his words carefully and said, "Look, I know you're students. You want to have fun, I get it. But this is Japan. At night, you have to be quiet. It's the time when everyone's trying to sleep. So please, keep it down." The Chinese students lowered their heads in deep apology, and quietly closed the door. Silence once again filled the apartment complex. From that night onward, the noise disappeared. Takeshi's calm but firm words must have gotten through to them. From the next day on, no sound came from the Chinese student's apartment. Emily had finally regained her peaceful nights. A few days later, she looked out the window and saw a surprising sight. Movers were carrying boxes out of the building. The Chinese students had decided to move out. Quietly, without causing any further disturbance, they left the apartment. Emily watched the scene with a sense of relief. At last, her life was returning to normal. Emily shared this experience on social media. Her story quickly went viral, with many people expressing sympathy for her struggles and admiration for Takeshi's calm and collected response. Takeshi is amazing, handling that so calmly. That's the patience and strength of the Japanese. I'd feel safe with a neighbor like him. Emily was astonished by the overwhelming response, and felt grateful for Takeshi's actions. His words had changed everything. From then on, Emily continued to live quietly in her apartment. Every night, she could lie down in bed and drift off to sleep without worry. It was only now that she truly appreciated the gift of silence. In a world where cultures collide, Emily had learned an important lesson. Patience, calmness, and respect for others are what make peaceful coexistence possible, no matter how different our backgrounds may be. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and hit the like button to continue enjoying more stories that showcase the beauty of Japan.